So, breaking news coming out of London tonight. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, has been fired. She's going to be pushed aside in the new year to make way for someone that is competent and able to do the job.
Rachel Reeves has complained that her £86,000 salary has left her financially short. Politicians said she winces at her bank balance.
Well, you voted against that in the third reading.
Well, we voted against some of the specifics around what they're doing.
You voted against
Look at their universal credit. You know, they have had to write off already £90 million worth of expending.
I'm not on the rights and the wrongs. I'm trying to work out what you voted for at the moment. We'll come on to...
We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers, and we couldn't have done it without you. Thank you for your incredible support. To celebrate, we're giving away £1,000 to 10 lucky winners, £100 each. Here's how to enter. Subscribe to our channel. Like this post. Drop your postcode in the comments. Once we hit 10,000 subscribers, we'll randomly select the winners. Don't miss your chance to be part of the £1,000 giveaway. Start now, and it could be you. Rachel Reeves isn't just facing criticism, she's making headlines for all the wrong reasons. The talk of the town, she didn't just step down, it looks like she was forced out. And the reason? Her own words, said long before she got into office, are now coming back to haunt her.
News, supposedly Rachel Reeves is looking to resign. Now, I think we all knew this was coming. I did actually call it.
Before becoming Chancellor, Reeves didn't hold back in interviews. She openly boasted about how tough she would be on welfare, cutting benefits not only for young people, but also for pensioners. That's right, even pensioners weren't off limits. At the time, it seemed like she wanted to project strengthened fiscal discipline. Now, those statements have aged like milk, with critics using them as evidence of her flawed priorities.
We're actually going to go further than the government. So, for example, cutting benefits for young people who don't sign up for training. The government haven't introduced that. For example, saying that the richest pensioners shouldn't get windfall fuel allowance. That's something that the government haven't signed up to. So those are two cuts that you would get under Labour that this government haven't signed up for. 100 million on the winter fuel allowance, 65 million pounds on youth allowance.
Andrew Neil, a journalist known for cutting through political spin, isn't letting her off the hook. He's been relentless, reminding everyone of her pre-election promises and comparing them to her lackluster performance in office. He's posed a question that resonates: how can someone who promised decisive action end up delivering so little? For Reeves, the spotlight isn't flattering, it's blinding.
Pretty much consign everything Labour had to say about tax during the election campaign to the dustbin of history. Consider how the narrative has changed. Before the election, we were assured that all Labour spending plans were fully costed and that there was no need for taxes to rise, bar a few small and specific increases like VAT on school fees. Within weeks of being elected, Chancellor Rachel Reeves claimed to have discovered a £22 billion fiscal black hole left behind by the dastardly Tory. PR and the IFS had already warned that Labour would inherit an eye-wateringly tight fiscal position, but that didn't stop Reeves affecting to be surprised. Nobody else was.
And here's where it gets even more interesting. This isn't just about one politician. Reeves's fall from grace is tied to a larger pattern within Labour's leadership. Andrew Neil isn't just questioning her, he's pointing fingers at the entire team, suggesting that this government is more about promises than results. How does a politician who once claimed she'd get things done end up being accused of doing nothing? That's the mystery Reeves now has to answer. Her words from the past might have helped her get elected, but today they're doing the opposite, tearing down the very image she worked so hard to build. Rachel Reeves's troubles don't stop at her controversial remarks. Her manifesto, the very document that was supposed to outline a vision for the UK, has been labelled by critics as a complete mess. Bold promises were made, ones that seemed revolutionary on paper.
What do you say to anybody who's thinking about doctoring their CV? Would that be considered within the rules? I ask because, of course, the Chancellor of the Exchequer has been found guilty of that, although facing no repercussions for it.
Obviously.
I'm really sorry, I'm not sure what you're referring to there, because the Chancellor of the Exchequer is an extremely qualified person to be taking...
Yeah, but she lied on her link.
When she took office, Reeves repeatedly emphasised her historic position as the UK's first female Chancellor. It was a moment of pride, no doubt, but actions speak louder than titles. Since she's been in charge, the public is asking, what has she accomplished? Her economic policies, touted as game changers, have yet to show meaningful impact. Meanwhile, her boastful claims of being tough on public spending are being overshadowed by growing criticism about her inability to deliver on those very promises. Andrew Neil, never one to miss an opportunity, has highlighted how Reeves's tenure has been characterized by delays, confusion, and a lack of clarity. From failing to address pressing economic concerns to her weak response to rising inflation, the cracks in her leadership are hard to ignore.
Tradition to go to the Two Chairmen pub in Westminster the night after the budget. I popped in, but I was doing the morning television and radio rounds afterwards, so I didn't stay for too long.
Did you buy the round though? People will want to know.
There are about 200 people there, so no.
Her attempts to defend herself often seem out of touch. Critics argue that she focuses more on optics, like repeatedly mentioning her groundbreaking role, than on substantive issues. People didn't elect her for ceremonial titles, they expected change, and that expectation is turning into frustration. Even her party members appear divided. Whispers of discontent are growing within Labour ranks, with some questioning her ability to steer the country through economic challenges. For someone who once seemed so confident in her abilities, the reality is hitting hard. Leading the UK requires more than words and historic firsts. As Reeves's reputation crumbles, one can't help but wonder, was she ever prepared for the job, or was it all just political theatre? And how long can Labour weather the storm of broken promises before the backlash grows too loud to ignore?
An old friend of mine wanted to support me during the election campaign, and the way that she wanted to support was to help me buy clothes for the campaign trail and for big events, and I was very grateful for that support. We declared it in the proper way, and we asked the registrar the best way to record it, and we did it in the way that was asked of us. I never planned to continue this in government, but it was something that was very beneficial to me during the campaign.
It doesn't look good, does it? To call dresses support. It looks as if you're trying to be vague about it.
Rachel Reeves's struggles are just one part of a bigger problem. Labour's leadership, once celebrated for its promise of renewal, is now facing a storm of criticism. Andrew Neil has been relentless in exposing the cracks, and this time it's not just Reeves under fire. Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner, and Rachel Reeves herself are being called the most unpopular trio to lead the UK in years. When Labour came to power, the expectations were sky high. Starmer was billed as the leader who could bring stability after years of political turmoil. Angela Rayner, his fiery deputy, was seen as someone who could connect with the public, and Reeves, she was supposed to be the steady hand on the economy. But fast forward to today, and public sentiment is shifting fast, and not in their favour. Neil's interviews have been particularly damning. He's called out Starmer's vague policies, Reeves's overambitious promises, and her inability to implement her economic vision. Recent polls paint a bleak picture. Starmer's approval ratings have plummeted, and Rayner, once seen as a relatable figure, now faces criticism for being out of touch. Reeves, meanwhile, has become a lightning rod for discontent over Labour's handling of the economy. What went wrong? Critics say Labour's leadership underestimated the challenges of governance. From economic stagnation to social unrest, their inability to present a clear and united front is eroding public trust.
No, excuse me, I'm asking a question. What's the cut in the capital gains tax?
They've cut the capital gains tax. They did that. They did that as part of the coalition government.
No, they raised the capital gains tax in the coalition government.
Well, what I'm saying, Andrew, and
what you're saying is wrong. They raised the capital gains tax to 28%.
For a party that once seemed destined to reshape the UK, the question is no longer about potential, it's about survival. Can this leadership team reverse the tide of growing unpopularity, or will they go down as the team that squandered Labour's biggest opportunity in decades? That's the uncomfortable reality they now face. As if Labour's plummeting popularity wasn't enough, the immigration crisis has added fuel to the fire. Over 1,000 migrants have crossed into the UK in recent weeks. Shockingly, more than 200 arrived on Christmas Day alone. These numbers have left many questioning the promises made by Keir Starmer and his team. Starmer vowed to fix the broken immigration system, but the situation tells a very different story.
I keep saying it's going to be a major problem. You mentioned your sons earlier. But more than 450 migrants crossed the English Channel in small boats on Christmas Day. 451 migrants arrived on 11 boats on the 25th. There was a lull before that. Just in terms of the numbers of boats, more than 150,000 illegal migrants have crossed the Channel since the small boats crisis began. So Labour keeps saying they're going to smash the gangs, whatever that means. But of course they've removed the deterrent of reward Rwanda. No one seems to understand what they're doing, least of all them.
Yeah, it's the issue I feel most strongly about, and it's the issue that's moved me from centre ground to right of politics, because the idea that we can have so many illegal immigrants coming over in small boats like this, I think is just outrageous.
Angela Rayner, Labour's deputy leader, has added another layer to the controversy with her ambitious plan to build 1.5 million new homes. On paper, it sounds like a solution to the housing crisis, but critics argue that the plan doesn't account for who will occupy these homes. Many believe the majority of new housing will be allocated to migrants, sparking frustration among those who feel their communities are already struggling with resources. Rayner has yet to address this issue head-on, leaving voters sceptical. The government's inability to stem the tide of illegal crossings only amplifies the discontent. Starmer has repeatedly insisted that Labour has a plan to control immigration, but with no clear policies in place and numbers rising daily, his words feel increasingly hollow. The public is left asking, if Labour can't handle this now, how will they manage it long term? Meanwhile, Andrew Neil has been quick to highlight these failures, pointing out the disconnect between Labour's promises and the reality on the ground. He's questioned whether Rayner's housing strategy is even feasible, given the current economic pressures. With soaring inflation and a strained public sector, building 1.5 million homes seems more like a pipe dream than a practical plan.
That more than 5 out of 7 new homes will go to immigrants.
Well, that's not the truth, and that's not the
That's
case.
what will happen.
Well, that's not the reality, because
where the 2.5 million immigrants that are in Rachel Reeves' budget figures going to turn up? Where are they going to live?
Well, there's plenty of housing in the UK, but the houses, especially hang on. You
can't on the one hand say we've got to build this 1.5 million houses and then say there's plenty of housing already.
Labour's troubles don't end with immigration and housing. If anything, those issues have highlighted the deeper problem, the leadership itself. Andrew Neil has made it his mission to expose what he sees as the incompetence and contradictions of Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner, and Rachel Reeves. And the more he digs, the more it becomes clear this team is struggling to maintain control. Interviews with Neil have become a battleground for Labour leaders, and not in a good way. Starmer, who once sold himself as the voice of calm and reason, often appears evasive under Neil's questioning. Angela Rayner, known for her direct style, has been caught fumbling details about housing and welfare policies. Rachel Reeves, meanwhile, has had a hard time defending her record as Chancellor, especially when Neil points out how far she's drifted from her pre-election promises. This is more than just embarrassing moments on television. Each slip-up feeds the growing narrative that Labour's leadership is out of its depth. Voters are noticing the lack of coordination and consistency, and it's eroding trust faster than Labour can repair it. Starmer's grand vision for a better Britain now seems overshadowed by constant damage.
Tax rises and spending cuts totalling £40 billion, with tax rises doing the heavy lifting at £35 billion, it said, out of the 40 billion. Now, that hasn't stopped novice ministers getting into a tizzy over possible cuts to their departmental budgets. Some, including the Deputy Prime Minister, have written to complain, though any government planning to spend over £1 trillion this year.
Neil's relentless criticism shines a harsh light on this dysfunction. He doesn't just ask questions, he exposes weaknesses Labour would rather keep hidden. And with every interview, every policy failure, the bigger question looms, is this leadership team capable of handling the UK's challenges, or are they just another group of politicians who talk big and deliver small? That's the reality Labour faces today. If you enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe to our channel. You can watch more videos from us here.